Take a breath right now, not a forced breath, just a natural one. And as you breathe, I want you to notice something. Is there any tension in your chest? Any tightness around the idea that you might matter more than you have been allowing yourself to believe? Because there are 8.2 billion people alive on this earth right now. 8.2 billion heartbeats. 8.2 billion stories crossing and colliding every single day. And in the middle of all that noise, all that comparison, all that endless measuring, something exists inside you that does not exist anywhere else on this planet. Not in a vague, inspirational way. Not the kind of thing people say when they don't know what else to offer. I mean specifically, precisely, in a way that can be named and understood. Before we go any further, I want to ask you to stay with me through this entire message, because by the end, you are going to have real language for something you have been feeling for years without being able to say it. You are going to understand where your hardest seasons actually came from and why they lasted as long as they did. And you are going to leave here seeing yourself in a way that changes something. Not just for an hour, something that sticks. So stay. What is coming matters. Now you have felt it. The way you see things, others miss. The depth at which you experience what most people seem to move through quickly. That quiet but persistent sense, patient, consistent, never fully silent, that you were built for something that hasn't fully arrived yet. That is not your imagination running ahead of reality. That is the signal of something real. Today, I want to show you exactly what it is, layer by layer, revelation by revelation. Because out of 8.2 billion people alive on this earth right now, what you carry has never existed before. And when you leave this earth, it will never exist again. Let me describe something. And I want you to tell me, even just to yourself, quietly, if this is true. You feel things at a depth that other people don't seem to reach. Not because you are more fragile, because you were built with more capacity, more surface area on the inside. And for most of your life, that has been both a gift and a weight you didn't know how to explain to anyone who wasn't already standing inside the same experience. You have never fully fit into one group. Not completely. You can move between worlds. You can understand people who are very different from each other, but you never fully belong in any single place. And for a long time, you thought that was the problem. I want to suggest to you today that it is actually the design. Your hardest seasons lasted longer than other people's seemed to. You watched others move through difficulty and come out quickly on the other side, while your formation took years. Seasons that felt like they should have ended. Rooms you stayed in long after you expected to leave them, and in those rooms you couldn't always see what was being built. But something was being built. You see the pattern beneath the surface. In people, in situations, before others notice. You have known things before you had evidence for them. You have sensed what was really happening in a room, while everyone else was focused only on what was being said. This has made you useful to people in ways they don't always have language for. And it has also made you lonely in a very specific way, the loneliness of seeing what others cannot yet see. And there is one more thing. Underneath all the noise of daily life, underneath the questions about money and work and relationships, there has been a quieter question, recurring, patient. A sense that you were meant for something you haven't fully touched yet. Not a fantasy, not wishful thinking dressed up as purpose. A signal. And it has never fully gone quiet, no matter how long the wait. These are not random personality traits. They are the signature of what you carry. Let me show you something that scientists have confirmed and that most people have never thought about deeply. In all of human history, across every person who has ever lived on this earth, no two human beings have ever shared the same fingerprint. Not identical twins, not people from the same family, the same culture, the same century. Every single person who has ever drawn breath on this planet carried a completely unique configuration on the tips of their fingers. Forensic scientists have studied this for over 100 years, and the conclusion has never changed. No two are the same. You probably learned this in school. What they didn't teach you is what it actually means. Because if the body is this precise, if the physical form that houses who you are is designed with this level of individual specificity, what does that say about what lives inside it? Your spiritual fingerprint is made of 4 things. The first is your specific combination of gifts, not one gift. The combination, because almost anyone can carry one quality you have. What makes yours unrepeatable is the exact configuration of them together, the way perception sits next to compassion, the way sensitivity sits next to endurance, the way vision sits next to the ability to wait through seasons most people cannot survive. The second is the exact wounds you survived, and I mean exact, the particular losses, the specific silence of certain people in seasons when their voices would have changed everything. The disappointments that arrived in the order they arrived. Each one shaped a precise angle of perception that could not have been produced any other way. Your pain did not just happen to you. It worked on you. The third is your precise moment in history. You are alive right now, at this exact point in time. That is not an accident. The world as it exists today, the questions it is wrestling with, the gaps it has that need filling, you arrived at the moment that corresponds to what you carry. This is not coincidence. This is positioning. The fourth is the people you were placed near. The ones who shaped you, some gently, some roughly. The ones who believed in you, and the ones who left, and the ones who challenged you in ways that still ache. Every single one contributed to the exact configuration of who you are today. No other person on this earth has these 4 things in this exact combination. Think about a seed. When you look at a seed, you do not see the tree. It looks like almost nothing, small, unremarkable, barely there. But inside that seed is the complete blueprint of everything the tree will ever become. Every branch, every root, every fruit. The tree does not create the blueprint later. The blueprint was already inside from the very beginning. You are not waiting to become something new. You are a tree that has not yet fully grown into what was always inside you. And here is the thing I want you to hold as we go deeper. That blueprint, the specific shape of what you carry, was not given to you fully assembled. It was forged, and that forging is where we go next. I want to be careful here, because there is a version of this message that moves too quickly to the good news. I am not going to do that. Before I tell you what was being built in you, I want to sit for a moment with what it cost, the years that felt wasted, the waiting that came with no explanation, the version of yourself that walked into certain seasons and did not come out the other side intact, the relationships that ended in ways that still make no sense, the doors that closed before they opened, the silence of rooms where your voice should have been welcomed and wasn't. That was real pain. I am not going to tell you it was fine. I am going to tell you it was purposeful, and those 2 things are very different. There is a pattern that appears across centuries, across cultures, across the lives of every person who has ever carried something the world wasn't initially ready for. Joseph had a clear sense of calling when he was young, a dream that felt true, felt real, felt certain. And then he was betrayed by the people closest to him. He spent years in a pit, then in a prison. 13 years passed between the calling and the moment he stepped into it. And during those years, something was being built in him that could not have been built in any other environment. A character capable of carrying what was coming, a patience that only forms in the long wait, a wisdom that only surfaces after real loss. David was anointed to be king at 15. He was 30 before he took the throne. 15 years in the fields, in the caves, in the wilderness, while others moved forward and he remained in hiddenness. And during those years, the person who would one day carry an entire people was being formed. The shepherd became the king. But only because the shepherd years happened first. And completely. And then there is the seed. When a seed goes into the ground, it does not look like growth. It looks like burial. It looks like nothing is happening. But underground, in the dark, the seed is breaking open, and that breaking is the mechanism. The tree cannot grow from an intact seed. The shell has to break. What looks like the end is the beginning of the real process. In your hardest seasons, this is what was happening. False identities were being stripped away. The need for external validation stripped. The borrowed identity, the version of yourself that formed around what others needed you to be stripped. The smaller, safer version of your calling, the one that fit inside spaces that were never large enough for what you were actually carrying, stripped. Each stripping felt like loss, and it was loss. But what was lost was not you. What was lost was what was covering you. The specific perception in you, the specific gifts in you, they required the exact conditions of what you went through to become what they are today. A shallow process produces a generic result. What you went through was not shallow. And now, want to tell you something about what science has discovered about the kind of mind that goes through what you have been through and comes out carrying what you carry. There are neuroscientists who have spent decades studying the brains of people who demonstrate extraordinary perception. People who seem to know things before they happen. People who see patterns others miss. People who operate in states of insight and clarity that most people only touch occasionally, if ever. What they found is not mystical. It is measurable. The frequency is called gamma. It is a brainwave specific, documented, measurable by EEG equipment in any clinical setting. Researchers at MIT, Princeton, Stanford, and Harvard have linked gamma activity to rapid pattern recognition, heightened intuition, accelerated learning, creative insight, and what scientists call the flow state, that condition where everything feels effortless, aligned, and exactly right. And here is what matters most. Gamma is not something rare adults develop. It is something every child is born with. Scientists describe it as a God-given brainwave present, active, and fully operational in every child who comes into the world. Children live in gamma naturally. That is why a 5-year-old can learn an entire language in months. That is why childhood feels vivid and magical, not just because responsibilities are absent, but because the brain is operating at a frequency that makes everything feel connected and alive. And then something changes. A neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake, 34 years of research, has documented what he calls the decline effect. Beginning around age 7, the modern environment begins suppressing gamma activity. The structure of formal education, the chronic low-level stress that becomes background noise, the constant stimulation designed to keep you busy but never deep, slowly, systematically. By the time most people reach adulthood, the frequency that was once their natural state has gone mostly quiet. But here is what Dr. Lake also found. In certain people, people who have gone through deep formation, people whose inner sensitivity never fully closed, people whose perception remained active through years of difficulty, the gamma frequency never completely disappeared. It went dormant. But it did not die. Dormant. Not gone. Now, I want to share something I came across in this research, because I believe it is genuinely useful for what you are building. Dr. Lake spent years working to make gamma reactivation accessible, not through the clinical biofeedback therapy that costs $300 per session, not through the home equipment that runs around $7,000, and not through months of meditation practice that most people cannot sustain long enough to see real results. He developed a 7-minute audio track embedded with a technology called brain entrainment, a method that uses precise sound frequencies to guide the brain back into gamma. You put on headphones. You close your eyes. You listen for 7 minutes. That is everything that is required. This is called the genius song. It is not meditation. It requires no special practice, no prior experience, no particular belief. The technology does the work. Your brain follows the frequency, the way a tuning fork responds to another tuning fork nearby. Over 18,000 people have now used it, and what they report follows a consistent pattern, a sense of clarity returning, things connecting that hadn't connected before, a sharpness that once felt natural and had quietly faded, beginning to come back. I want to be honest with you, because you deserve that. This is a tool. A real, scientifically grounded, practically accessible tool. It will not do the inner work for you, but it can restore the frequency that makes the inner work feel possible again and sustainable. One more thing I need to say, because it matters. Because of how widely this has spread, there are now imitation products online using the name without the actual brain entrainment technology embedded in them. They are ordinary audio files. They are not the same thing, and they will not produce the same results. The only way to access the genuine version with the full technology, the 4 bonuses included, and the complete money-back guarantee is through the link I have placed in the description and the pinned comment of this video. About the bonuses. When you access it through that link, you also receive an audio track designed for children's focus and confidence. The original book that the film The Secret drew its inspiration from, valued at $20 and included at no charge, a guided visualization covering the 4 areas of life that matter most, and a printed infographic of the 5 most important habits for building the future you are actually capable of. And if you feel no difference at all, if you listen and nothing shifts, you receive every dollar back. No explanation required. No conditions. You take no risk. For people watching this video, the price is $39, not $49, which is the standard price. Not available on Amazon, not through any search engine, not anywhere else, only through the link in the description and the pinned comment below. Do not search for it anywhere else. What you will find are the imitations. If you want to explore this, the link is waiting for you. Let me bring something together now. Everything we have talked about, the fingerprint, the formation, the frequency, it is all pointing to the same thing. And in this part of the message, I want you to see it whole. Because when you do, something is going to shift. Not a shift you have to create. A shift that happens on its own when the picture finally comes into focus. Here is what I want you to understand about fingerprints. Scientists who study them discovered something remarkable about how they form. Fingerprints don't form in a moment. They develop in the womb, over months, shaped by something very specific: pressure. The movement of fluid against developing skin, the exact position of the hand, the particular conditions of that specific environment at that specific time. 2 people in the same family, growing in adjacent conditions, will still produce entirely different prints because no 2 sets of pressures are ever identical. The fingerprint is not designed in advance and then placed on the finger. It is formed by everything the finger moves through. Your calling works the same way. The experiences that pressed against you, the ones that felt like opposition, like delay, like unnecessary difficulty, they were not interruptions to your formation. They were the mechanism of it. The exact pressures that shaped the exact print that only you carry, the losses that came, the waiting with no visible end, the relationships that broke, the seasons when everything that felt stable was removed. You moved through all of it, and everything you moved through left a mark, not a wound alone, but a specific impression, a specific capacity, a specific wisdom that cannot be taught and cannot be borrowed from someone else's story. There is a pattern across history that makes this undeniable. Every person who has ever carried something extraordinary first went through a period of formation that, from the outside, looked like failure or delay or obscurity. This is not inspiration, this is a mechanism, and it does not change because the person changes or the century changes. The mechanism is the same. The depth of your formation matches the specificity of your assignment. Let me say that again, because I want it to land. The depth of your formation matches the specificity of your assignment. A shallow process produces a general result, something useful, something good, but something many people could do. What required years of formation, years of difficulty, years of stripping away that produced something very specific. Something that only works because of the exact path that produced it. Out of 8.2 billion people alive on this earth right now, no one else went through exactly what you went through. No one else was shaped by exactly those people, exactly those losses, exactly that silence, exactly those seasons. No one else had their specific gifts refined in exactly that particular fire, which means no one else can do what you were designed to do. Not in the same way, not for the same people, not at the same depth. No one else can reach who you were designed to reach. There are specific people in this world, some you have already met and some you haven't yet, who will only be reached by what you carry, not by a version of it, not by someone else doing their best impression of it, by the real thing, by you. You have been thinking of your uniqueness as something you were simply born with. I want you to understand something different. You were born with the seed of it, but the specific shape of what you carry today that was made, through everything, through all of it. You are not becoming who you were meant to be someday. You are already carrying what was formed through everything you have survived. The question is not whether it exists. The question is whether you are willing to see it clearly. Now, I want to give you the language for what you carry. Real language, specific, not categories you wear as labels, but lenses you use to see yourself more clearly. There are 5 markers I want to walk you through. As I describe each one, I want you to notice quietly, without forcing anything, which ones you recognize in yourself, not which ones you wish were true. Which ones feel like a description of something already real. The first is what I call the seer. The seer perceives what others cannot, not in a dramatic way, not always in a way that is visible to anyone else. It is the internal experience of knowing before the evidence arrives, sensing the undercurrent beneath a conversation, recognizing a pattern in a situation before it has fully formed. If this is you, you have spent much of your life navigating the tension between what you knew and what you could prove. You have been right about things in ways you couldn't explain, and that has sometimes isolated you. That perception is not a burden, it is a precision instrument. And it was developed through every season when you had to read what was beneath the surface just to survive. The second is the light bearer. The light bearer carries something in their presence that shifts the quality of a room. Not loudly, not dramatically, simply by being there. If this is you, people have always come to you, not always for advice, not always for answers, but because being near you made something in them feel less lost. That quality is not an accident of personality, it is a frequency, and it is yours specifically. The third is the truth carrier. The truth carrier cannot live in inauthenticity in themselves or in the spaces around them. They feel the gap between what is being said and what is actually true, and that gap is physically uncomfortable in a way that others don't always understand. If this is you, you have walked away from things that looked good from the outside because something underneath felt wrong. You have ended conversations, relationships, opportunities not because you were being difficult, but because you were being honest in a way that most people learn to suppress. That quality is rare. The world has more of what it needs when people like you do not silence it. The fourth is the cycle breaker. The cycle breaker is the first in a lineage, a family, a community, a repeated pattern to carry something different. If this is you, you have sometimes felt the weight of more than just your own story, like the difficulty you were navigating was not entirely yours alone. Like you were carrying something that had been passed down through generations and had reached you to be resolved. That is not a metaphor, that is a real assignment. And the breaking happens through you, through the specific way you chose to respond differently than what came before you. The fifth is the pioneer. The pioneer goes first, not for glory, not because the path is clear, but because no one else has moved yet, and something inside them cannot wait any longer. If this is you, your path has often looked like there was no path, like you were walking through territory with no map, no model, no one who had been exactly where you were. That is not a sign you went the wrong way. That is the nature of being first. The path exists after you walk it, and others will walk it because you did. Most of you who are here carry more than one of these, and the combination, the specific way these qualities sit together in you, shaped by the specific formation you went through, that combination is the spiritual fingerprint we have been talking about. Unique, unrepeatable, designed. Now, I want to give you something practical to do with this, and I want it to be something you can do right now, exactly where you are. Not a practice that requires anything from your physical environment, just your mind, just your attention. Think of one of these 5 markers, the one that felt most true when I described it, just one. Hold it in your mind. Now, say something to yourself silently, not aloud, that begins with the words, I am, not I want to be, not I am trying to become, I am. Let the statement be simple and direct, and let it name what is already true, not what you are hoping will one day become true. Speak it the way you would state a fact about the color of the sky. This is not affirmation. Affirmation is hope spoken aloud. This is declaration, naming what already exists, refusing to wait until others confirm it before you acknowledge it yourself. You do not need permission to name what you carry, and you do not need to have arrived fully to call yourself by what you are becoming now. I want to be honest with you about something, because we are far enough into this conversation for honesty. The most common reason people receive a real revelation, something true, something that lands and do not let it change them, is not because they don't believe it. It is because something inside them moves immediately to argue against it. You may be feeling it right now. That quiet internal voice that says, this sounds right for others, but probably not for me. I have made too many mistakes. I have wasted too much time. I've been hearing messages like this for years, and nothing has changed. Why would now be different? I want to name that voice, because it deserves to be named clearly. It is not wisdom. It is not discernment. It is not the voice of a higher intelligence protecting you from false hope. It is a survival pattern. It formed in seasons when hoping too much and being wrong was genuinely dangerous. When the gap between what you believed was possible and what actually happened was painful enough that closing down felt safer than staying open. And so a part of you learned to argue against the good news before it could disappoint you. Before the arrival of something real could be followed by its loss. That pattern protected you when you were smaller and the world was less predictable. But the season it was built for has passed, and it does not know that yet. It is still running its original programming in a context where you no longer need it. Here is what I want to offer instead. Stop measuring your path against anyone else's. There are 8.2 billion paths on this earth. None of them identical, not even close. Comparing where you are on your path to where someone else is on theirs is the equivalent of asking why your fingerprint doesn't look like the person standing next to you. It is the wrong comparison. It has always been the wrong comparison. Your timing is your timing. Your formation took as long as it took because of what was being built, not as punishment, not as evidence that you are behind, as design. And when you genuinely stop using someone else's timeline as the measuring stick for your own, when you actually release that comparison rather than just deciding to temporarily feel better about it, something in you exhales. Something that has been holding tension for a long time finally gets to rest. You are not behind. You are exactly where your particular formation requires you to be at the exact moment your assignment begins to move. Now, I want to do something together before we close. Not an exercise that requires you to get up or move. just your attention, just the space between thoughts. I want to acknowledge something, and I want you to let it be acknowledged without immediately deflecting it or shrinking it down to something more manageable. You have been carrying something heavy for a long time. The weight of a calling that hasn't fully landed yet. The weight of seasons that lasted longer than they seem to have any right to last. The weight of feeling different in a world that is very efficient at making people feel like different is a problem to be solved. I see that weight, and I want to say something very directly. It was never nothing. Not one day of it, not 1 hour of the waiting, not one morning of the confusion, not one season of the hiddenness. None of it was wasted. Every single piece of it was working on the only thing in the world that only you could carry. Now let me speak something over you. Let it land wherever it is able to land. What you are is not an accident. The sensitivity you were born with real. The calling that has been persistent and quiet and unwilling to be fully silenced real. The sense that you were positioned here at this moment for a specific purpose that the world is not finished discovering real. You are a seer who sees what others cannot. You are a light bearer whose presence changes rooms. You are a truth carrier who cannot rest in inauthenticity. You are a cycle breaker ending what was never supposed to continue. You are a pioneer walking a path because no one else has moved yet. You are not one of these things someday. You are already carrying all of this right now, shaped and made and forged into exactly what was needed. The seed spent its most important time underground. It did not look like growth. It looked like nothing. But the blueprint of the entire tree was already inside it from the beginning. And everything that darkness did to the seed, all of that pressure, all of that time, it was not the enemy of the tree. It was the making of it. You are the tree. Everything you have been through was the making of you. And what you are about to carry into the world, the specific thing that exists in you and nowhere else among 8.2 billion people, that is not waiting to be created. It is waiting to be seen. By you first, and then by the world. The weight you have been carrying is not a sign that something went wrong. It is the exact weight of the assignment. And you have been strong enough to carry it because you are still here, because something in you kept going. Because the thing inside you that was being formed refused to let you stop. Go carry what only you can carry. Not when you feel ready. Not when others see it first. Not when the path is clear and the confirmation is visible. Now, as you are. With everything you have been through and everything you have become through all of it, out of 8.2 billion people, there is only one you. There has only ever been one you, and the world has been waiting. Longer than you know for exactly what you carry. One last thing, and then I will let you go. Out of everyone alive on this earth today, the fact that you stayed with this message, that something in you recognized these words, that you are still here at the end, that is not coincidence either. You don't discover a calling by stumbling across information. You recognize it. Something in you responds to what is already true about you. And something in you recognizes this. No two fingerprints, no two callings. One you, one assignment, one moment in history. Go.